My father was just too young for World War I. And when World War II came, he was just too old. I always thought maybe he was born at a convenient time, so he missed both wars. But he was very patriotic. And in World War II, he spent one day of his time, he was self-employed, a week, one whole day sitting in a tower in outside of Turlock, California, where we live, identifying any plane that came over or any flying object. And one of the things that they did on the West Coast, the Japanese sent up balloons out in the ocean that would float with the natural current of air across California. And then when they would hit the mountains and it would start to go up in the elevation, they would explode and they would start fires, forest fires and grass fires. And actually, the press, it's probably the last time the press ever cooperated with a war effort of anything. They cooperated and they never reported these fires that they started. And so the Japanese thought, well, it's not working, and they quit sending the balloons over. But if they had kept it up, they could have devastated the forest area and many of the grassland areas of California, because in the summertime there's no rain in California and it gets very dry and it's very easy to start fires. And so anyway, my father's older brother was one of the soldiers that was killed in France. And then his other older brother was drafted into the service and was on a ship sailing out of San Francisco to go to France to fight. And my grandfather excuse me, wrote a letter to the president, which arrived about that time, and said, I've given one son, do I have to give another one? And so the President of the United States sent a telegram to that ship that my other uncle was on, just going, ready to go out the Golden Gate. And they stopped the ship and sent out a launch and took him off the ship and discharged him from the army. And but my father was very patriotic. He was just too young for World War I and just too old for World War II. But during World War II, he was self-employed. He took one day a week when he could have been out working and making money, and he sat in a tower and identified any flying objects that they saw. And one of the things the Japanese did was to send up these incendiary balloons, and they would drift over California, and California is very dry in the summer, unlike Florida. You don't get any rain for 6 months. It gets dry. And they would then, as they would go up and hit the mountains, they would explode and start fires. And if they had continued that, they could have absolutely devastated the state of California.
Thanks for that story.
But the press cooperated with the war effort and never reported the fires. And so the Japanese didn't think it was working, so they quit doing it. And
Grandma, did your daddy ever see a fire when he was up there?
you know, he never told us anything.
Oh.
He was not supposed to tell anything he saw. And and besides that, I mean, I was small, and I remember when we came out of church that Sunday that they bombed Pearl Harbor, and I heard about it, and I had seen a newsreel at a Shirley Temple movie. That's aging me, right there.
Mine too.
Really?
Actually,
You know Shirley Temple?
yes. I like Shirley Temple.
Well, she was live back then.
Poor Todd.
But in this movie preview, they showed this newsreel. I mean, this was supposed to be a children's movie, and they showed this. I mean, it was a horrid, scary thing, where the Japanese were going and pulling people out of their houses where they had conquered different places and torturing these. So I had this vision that the Japanese were going to come down the streets of Turlock, California, and most of you have never heard of Turlock, California, and there's a good reason you hadn't. And they would be, breaking into our house and pulling us out, and all these things. I had the visions of that. But after a few days, the Japanese didn't come, and so I kind of forgot about it. But we had blackouts. We had
It was a scary time, huh?
it was, and my father, I think I mentioned, his brother was killed in World War I. His older